So we're going to create a digger bucket, and we'll start with an isometric sheet metal part. Sheet metal is slightly different from the normal part modelling because it's constant thickness, and this component here is going to be sheet metal. So when you open it up, you can see that you've got a plane set up, so you've got your front, side and plan. And what we're going to do is start off by drawing the sketch. So if we start with the line command, and when you change which plane you're working on, the coordinates change direction. So we're going to work on this front plane, and if we hit the F3 key, that actually locks it onto that plane. So everything that we draw from here is locked on that plane. So we go Control H, and that switches it to the sketch plane. So you can see that as we move over the point here, the cursor icon changes. So that's a point on, that's an end point connection. So that's building some geometry constraints as we go. So we click there and we move across, and we'll start with, say, 350 wide. So that defines our length but not the angle. So if we come here, the cursor icon now changes to a horizontal because we are horizontal. So we click there, and that then sort of lets us carry on. We can go to the arc command, which I'll do. If I go back to the starting point and hit the A key, that switches from a line to an arc. If you can see there, there's a circle with a cross through it. Depending on which way you come out of that depends on whether you get perpendicular or tangent. So we want to go tangent, and as you see on the cursor, the length is set up. So that's sort of in this case the diameter. So in this case we'll make the diameter 235, and we want the angle of the arc. So you see how it's switched to the angular dimension now that we've hit enter, and we want a 145 degree arc. So you can go tab to switch between the two, and then click a point, so it switches back to the line. So now as I move round, you can see the tangency icon come up, which is what we want. If you don't find that being highlighted, so you can see the arc coming up in orange, all you've got to do is move over the arc and it will recognise the geometry related to that. So now all I need to do is put in a length, hit the tab key. I can leave the angle the same, so I just want to make sure that it is tangent, so I'll click a point, and then finally I want to notice how it's picking up the other pieces of geometry connections. We don't really want that. We just want to come in here, and the length wants to be 70 mil, and the angle wants to be 140 from the other plane. So if I just make sure that I'm not picking up off anything else, don't want it vertical, don't want to pick up off that other geometry. So if I put it in there somewhere, I can then redefine that. Now, just to make sure that nothing moves, I can add a dimension. So smart dimension can come off here, and notice how the smart dimension gives us what's appropriate to what we're drawing. If I click on it again, I can switch from a radius to an angular dimension, and then I can pull off this one here and this one here. So as you see, the dimension size comes up. These dimensions are shown in red because they are locked. If they're coming up in blue, you can click on this and they'll change. And then finally what I'll do is a angle between So we can go between here. Try not to click up on the key points, and in this case we want to change this to 140, and that gives us that. So finally I want to put a radius in, so the fillet command, we want to set it to a 16mm fillet. Now I could pick up on that line and then that line. Alternatively, if I pick up on the corner between the two, it automatically applies that. So there's our profile that we want to work with. Let's turn the lock plane off, and what we want to do is a contour flange. So a flange normally just pulls off from an edge, but we're going to draw this in one go. So if I click up on this sketch here and give a direction, notice it's only coming one way or the other. We can change that with this one here. Alternatively, if I hit the shift key, that then makes it symmetric. So the width needs to be 830, and if I tab across, this is the sheet metal thickness that it's going to work with. That wants to be 8. Tab, and I want it to go, this is the inside dimension, so I want it to go outwards. So if I click on the arrow, that switches the direction of that plane. So now I've applied that, and there's your profile for your digger bucket. Okay, so let's look at what's happened. The sketch that we had has been converted into a solid. We've worked off this front edge as the sketch, and some of those dimension values have been carried through. So a blue dimension is an unlocked dimension, and if it was locked it would be red. If you want to change that, we can just go in here and unlock it. So anything that's blue or red you can adjust. Notice that the arrow is pointing to this top face. If I changed it to the bottom face, it will be this face that would change. And if I want to change the value, I can just key in the value in here, hit enter, and it will adjust that geometry. The other dimension down here is purple, and that means that that value is driven by something else. So in this case, this arc in here is seen as a bend radius, and that has a specific value in the variable table. So we'll come out there. We can make adjustments to the size of the model. if I click on the face here, you'll notice that we've got two options at this stage. One's either to move it upwards, the other one is to move it to the right. If I move it to the right, we actually change the thickness of it by this value on the cursor. Notice it's going in both directions. That's because we've got symmetry on, and as we drew it symmetric in the first place, it recognises that it is symmetric, so we can turn that off if we want, and only one side will update. If I hit the S key for symmetry, it will switch it back to being symmetric. So if I switch around to my front view using the viewing cube and click out somewhere else to deselect what I had selected, I can click, hold down and do a fence selection, and that brings me up my steering wheel here. If I click on the origin, which is the center knob, and move over an arc, it's going to center it on the center of that arc. So just square that up so you can see what's happening. There's the variable that is driving this rather than this one. So it sees as a 235 bend radius. This one up here is the 8mm bend radius on the inside there. So I can adjust the length of this bottom flange by clicking on the arrow here, and then that modifies it so that I can stretch that out as far as I need to. So this value here is changing the overall length of that flange by this amount. If I hit the escape key, we drop back to our steering wheel, and I can show that I can actually click on the torus and adjust the angular distance of this arc by a certain amount. So you've got a fair amount of control over what you're doing here. So Control I takes me back to my isometric view. Escape drops me out there, and I can hide my PMI dimensions as I don't need them. And then if I hit save, that will then save the part out. I've already saved this one. This is called panel, and the .psm stands for part sheet metal, and that's the standard template file extension. Something else you may want to do with this is under the tools menu, you'll see that we've got the different modes of working in here. If I go to flatten, that's going to switch through. I need to pick a face, which is going to be the flat edge, and an edge here defines the orientation, and there's your blank size. So it's got dimension of 830 by 1378. When you're finished, you can go back to your synchronous model, and the blank size is still shown down here, so that if you then want to save that out for manufacturing, that can then be used for that. Now we've got this panel done, we need to create the side plate. So in this case we will go File, New, and we will have a it doesn't really matter whether it's part or sheet metal. Basically it's just a flat sheet, so either would be fine. So if we go and start with a line, and we'll hit the F3 key to lock it to this plane here, Control H to orientate it, and we'll start at the center again, and this one we want to make 307 long. Hit enter to lock it, and place a point so that it's horizontal. Again, hit the A key. This one wants to be say 257, and the angle we want this time is 122. And then for this, if I hold the Shift and Control key down with the right mouse key, I can sort of drag that around. So there's our tangency that we're after, and this time we want it to be 280 long, and then finally we'll take it back to that center point. So if you see the end point connection there, and because it's a close profile, that finishes. If I hit the escape key and turn off the plane lock, that's the profile of our plane. So if I click on here, and it doesn't really matter which way we go, again we'll make this 8mm, and that's our side panel. So if we go save, now we're going to actually have two side panels, so we'll just call this side panel 1 and save that one away, and close it off with Control F4. So we're going to need to assemble these two. So to start with, we'll start with this piece here that we had earlier. So if we go up to the application menu and you go new, and if you pick on the assembly of active model, what that does is it takes this part here and uses this assembly template and positions that right in the center of that assembly. And I'll save that options that I've changed. So as you can see, it opens up the assembly, and as with most first features, the coordinate system on the part is concentric or in line with the assembly coordinate system. And if you wanted to change that, you can right mouse click on here, go to occurrence properties, and you'll see that we've got the ability to offset it by X, Y and Z, and angularly in the X, Y and Z position as well. So you can move that off center if you wish. So then we go to our parts library, and we change our folder to where we were building our parts. So we've got the side panel, and what you need to do, you can see that we can actually rotate this around in here if we wanted to. That puts it into the rough orientation of what we're after, and then we come back up here and we drag that in, and it will have that default orientation. So now you need to define how you want to position these two parts in relation to each other, and we can start by doing a mate. So if I move over that face there, there's two faces underneath the cursor, so it's given me the mouse icon. So if I right mouse click as it's showing, you can see that you can pick either one without having to rotate it each time. So we want the back face, and we are going to mate it with this part and the side face, so that then brings it in line with that. So the next one is we want to align the bottom. So if we go down to our options here, we did a mate, and now we want to do a planar align. So that's aligning two faces, and you can adjust your settings in here. So we want a fixed offset of not sure which way around it be. I'll go -14. So we want to pick up off that bottom edge, and we want to align it with the bottom edge of the part. So now you can see that we have those in position. So the only other one is to actually axial align these two arcs here. So if we just turn it around just to make sure that we get the right thing, and go with that one, that snaps that into place, and you'll see that it's now dropped out of that command because it's now fully constrained. You can see that with the icon here. So if I wanted to, I can put one on the other side. So if we come over to our Pathfinder, we can just drag it back in from that Pathfinder. This here is the Pathfinder. So again, we can do a mate, that one, to, I'll pick the same edge, that edge there, and then we want to do a planar align. Choose that face at the bottom, make sure that we put in our offset. Yeah, and we want the bottom face. And then finally our axial align, that one to that one. So now if you sort of rotate it around, you can see that we've got 3 parts in our assembly down here. If we click on one of these parts, you can see the relationships that we set up. So if you wanted to adjust it, you can click on that, and up comes your distance in here, and you can adjust that as well.